Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over using AI, but more specifically using NotebookLM by Google to help study and apply bug bounty topics. Now there's a bunch of different bug types or vulnerabilities that you may run into, and sometimes it can be hard studying them or remembering them all, just because there's such a variety and they're all very different most of the times with their technicalities. So we're going to be going over a couple features of NotebookLM and then ways that you can actually apply the things that get created from it. And I am not sponsored by NotebookLM or anything like that. I just think that it's a great tool and it could be very beneficial to people. So let's just go over everything. Real quick, in the left pane, we have a way to add sources. Now you can either click on add and then you can drop in a bunch of things here. So files, copy text, but the biggest ones that I use are normally the YouTube links and copy text, just because I can paste from my notes or something very easily. But I'm sure websites will work as well, and things like PDFs. They also have a discover sources tab, which I haven't got the best functionality out of, but you can try to type in what you want to look for and it will discover those sources for you, but I haven't found that they're the best. So then once you see your sources, you'll be able to click on each one and get a source guide, which gives you basically a summary of what the website or YouTube video goes over. So as we can see, this talks about XXE, which is XML external entity injection, which is basically you can use XML to do some things like server-side request forgery or sometimes even RCE. And then if you click on one of these key topics, we could see that it will open up this chat window where we can actually chat with all of our sources that are selected, and it will basically give us a full breakdown of the vulnerability, what it does, and further information. When I'm going through these chats and everything, I normally just select all sources, but if you want to specify something in specific like CSRF, you could just click on that source and then you can create things based off of just that one source. Moving over a pane, we have the full chat window, so before you even click on anything, you'll get a big summary of all of the sources you have, which you can also save that to a note, which I find helpful sometimes. But in general, we could just see a nice summary and then as well as some quick shortcuts, which we'll go over in a minute, but also just a chat window to chat with all of the sources. So I could say, show me the list of top 5 bugs that are most prevalent. Now, if people have talked about most prevalent bugs within these sources, it'll come back with a list. And a good thing about NotebookLM is anything that you're doing with inside these panes are only coming from the sources here. So they're not coming from the outside or pulling in text from anywhere else, which is helpful because it keeps you focused on your topics that you're actually studying. So here are the most 5 common vulnerabilities that are from these sources. We have cross-site scripting, of course. That one is extremely relevant, and as you can see, it's being described here as pervasive. Then obviously broken access control, which is a very fun one to look for, and it's almost one of my main ones that I look for. And then the list goes on, and you can keep chatting with this. And another great thing about this chat window is that you can actually click on the citing of these sources and it will pop up the exact transcript of where this is at. So as you can see, cross-site scripting is still one of the most commonly found vulnerabilities across bug bounty platforms, so it'll give you direct references, which is super nice. And then of course you can save this to note as well, or copy the text, which I like as well. This configuring of the chat, which is in this top right pane, helps you define the conversation style. So if you want it to guide you through the bugs more or analyze the actual sources, you can go through that, and then shorter or longer is pretty self-explanatory. Next is my favorite pane, which is the studio pane. We'll go over the audio in a second while I let that generate. But right here we have some great features. The study guide, which when you click on them, it'll generate based on the sources you have selected, so it's going to go all of them. So it's going to create us a study guide based on these 18 sources, and then we'll also generate a briefing doc. And then up here, if you scroll back up to the top, you'll also see the ability to generate a mind map, which I think is one of the most useful features. And we'll go over that in just a second. So here's our study guide that has just been generated off of our 18 sources. And as you can see, it opens up into different types of questions. So it will have a quiz with either an answer key or something like that. And sometimes it just gives you key points and you have to go over them, or it gives you multiple choice. It depends on how many sources you have and the actual functionality. So this says explain the core concept of an XXE injection, and then it gives you the full answer, which is super nice to help study. So as you can see, it is a web vulnerability where an application can interfere with the application's processing of XML data. So you can go on and all of the answers here. And then as you can see, it changes to essay format, so you can take these questions, answer them in your notebook or whatever, and then send them to ChatGPT or something to grade you, which is a great way to study for this, but also any other application like school, or if you just want to learn a new topic. And then as you can see at the bottom, it gives you a glossary of all the key terms, which is super useful because in security or technology in general, there is a bunch of terms that are used. A lot of the times they are shortened down into acronyms, so you have to be able to remember them. And this helps you kind of generate a nice list based off of that. So that's our study guide, which is very helpful for remembering things. And then we have our briefing doc. So this basically go over all of the types of bugs and vulnerabilities inside our sources. So as you can see, the number one thing they choose here is the IDOR, and it gives you key concepts and mechanisms, and even down to the detection and prevention. It goes through all of these, and as you can see, we even get some real world impact, which is super awesome. Next is a mind map, which is, I think, is the most fun because you're actually able to interact with the site, with each bug. So you can click on cross-site scripting here, and if you click on the actual if you click on the box, it'll open up the chat pane and you're able to chat with each of those separate boxes. Or if you click this little arrow, it basically expands into more subsections. So since these are all just vulnerabilities, it's going to go into the definition of each one of these vulnerabilities, the types, and down. So as we can see, let's go to attack vectors to see what kind of ways we can actually exploit this. So we can use payload obfuscation to bypass WAFs or firewalls, things like that. We can exploit DOM vulnerabilities, which is kind of running in the background of the sites and the browsers. And then social engineering tactics. So this is getting people to click on something on your profile or something to actually execute that cross-site scripting payload. So as you can see, this really breaks it down to what we would actually be doing if we were going the social engineering route. And let's just see what the chat box has to say about using social engineering tactics as a cross-site scripting attack vector. So as you can see, it'll take a little bit to generate, and it'll go only off of these scripts. So here we go. For reflected XSS, social engineering is crucial because it typically requires tricking a user into clicking a malicious URL. So you could set up, basically get a whole methodology based off these different bugs and chat windows, which is super helpful. So this is just one way to use this mind map. If you're focusing on different topics like red teaming or something, you'll not really get this key term list, but there's a bunch of different ways that you can use this to your advantage. Another great feature, which is going to take a little bit to generate, is this audio overview, which basically is a podcast generation that gives you a conversation between two AI agents, and they talk back and forth about all of these, whatever your sources are talking about. So in this case, the web vulnerabilities. So I'll give you a little preview of what that sounds like. We're going to start a little bit into the clip so you can hear them talk about stuff relevant.
Got it. Okay, next up, XML, External Entity Injection, XXE.
Yeah.
You mentioned this one exploits a a legitimate feature of XML.
That's right. XXE leverages a standard feature of XML called external entities. XML documents can define and reference these things called document type definitions, or DTDs.
DTDs?
Yeah, DTDs. They define the structure of the XML. And these DTDs can include entity tags, which are basically like shortcuts or variables. Now, the key part is an entity can use the system keyword to pull in content from an external source, including local files on the server.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Exactly.
So as you can see, they're talking about XML injection or XXE injection, and they're talking about fetching files from the system once the server is processing those XML files. So another thing I just wanted to show you real quick is how to actually add sources. Like I said, you can click through all of these. My main method is going to the YouTube ones because I find that's where I find the most knowledge that I want to consume. So all you have to do is literally copy the link, shout out Nahamsek, and then we click the YouTube URL here, and then click insert, and it'll ingest that into the sources. And then as you can see, super quick, we get a whole summary as well as our key topics to go into further. So this video shows how to create a successful career in bug bounty hunting, and then goes through everything as well, like VDPs and deep dive learning. So like I was saying about adding a source like a PDF or something, I'm going to show you a great way to generate your own PDFs and things to import into NotebookLM to study. So for example, I asked ChatGPT Deep Research to create me an extensive report on all the web application vulnerabilities, like the ones in Portswigger's Web Academy, and then all of the intricacies about the bugs and how to exploit them. Normally, Deep Research is going to ask you a couple questions to tailor the report more. So as you can see, I said all bugs, payloads and steps as examples, and then I wasn't really concerned about the remediation here because I'm not on the development side, although it kind of gives you some insight onto why the bugs are actually caused if you want to. So then as you can see, the research took 20 minutes from 44 sources and generated me this entire report, which goes through all different types of bugs like SQLI, cross-site scripting, and then how to chain some bugs. So chaining, cross-site scripting, and cross-site request forgery. And it just goes into a lot of detail. So then what I do from when this is generated, I click on this export button, and then I'll be able to download this PDF and import that into NotebookLM, which I did right here. And as you can see, here's our report with all of the topics and web vulnerabilities. So this is just another way to generate sources and import content that you actually want to learn, and you can specify this down to the nitty-gritty. And this is one of the many ways that you can use artificial intelligence to benefit you from an educational perspective, but also to apply these different types of workflows and become smarter at the end of the day and learn how to use them, and also how to apply them to find more bugs or just to freshen your knowledge on them.